Have you ever been to court? Many people go to court at least once in their lives. You could be involved as a witness or one of the people involved in a criminal or a civil case. Every day, thousands of citizens are asked to serve as jurors in jury trials. But many of the people you see in this video go to court for another reason. They work here. There are 58 counties in the state of California. Each county has one or more courthouses to conduct county business, provide offices to file paperwork in all types of legal matters, and to provide courtrooms for legal proceedings. This is the Hall of Justice in Ventura, California. Many types of matters are heard in court. We'll be talking about criminal and civil cases. A criminal case involves a person who is accused of breaking the law. He or she is called the defendant and is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Some examples of criminal cases are driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, sometimes called DUI, robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and auto theft. If the defendant is found guilty, he may have to serve time in jail or prison, or maybe just pay a fine. The judge decides what punishment is proper for the defendant. When the judge imposes that punishment, it is called a sentence. We will also be talking about a civil case. This often involves a dispute, which is a disagreement, between citizens or companies over money or property. Some examples of civil cases are disputes or disagreements involving the breaking of a promise or contract, damage to someone's property, or injury to someone's body. In a civil case, the person bringing the lawsuit is called the plaintiff, and the person being sued is called the defendant. Here is an example of the difference between a criminal case and a civil case. This young man has been arrested and charged with the crime of driving his car under the influence of alcohol and causing an accident which injured this woman. The district attorney has brought criminal charges against him for breaking the law. In the criminal case, he is being represented by a lawyer from the public defender's office. In a separate civil case, the injured woman has sued the young man to get money for her medical expenses, her lost wages while she was unable to work after the accident, and for the pain, suffering, and disability her injuries have caused her. In this civil action, the injured woman is being represented by a civil trial lawyer, and the young man is being represented by a lawyer hired by his automobile insurance company. Let's go into a typical courtroom and meet the judge and his staff. We'll be observing them in session. The judge is like a referee who is in charge of running the proceedings. He or she listens to the legal issues raised by the attorneys on both sides and decides how the laws should be applied. The judge also decides what evidence can be presented in a trial. Evidence is anything from what a witness says on the witness stand to items like a gun, a knife, a photograph, or a document. In a jury trial, the judge instructs the jury on how to interpret the law. If there is no jury, the judge hears the case and decides the verdict. A trial without a jury is called a bench trial or a court trial. To become a judge, you must have been a practicing attorney for at least 10 years. You can run for office and be elected, or you can be appointed by the governor.
We get a lot of people in here, of course, who are in trouble. They're very angry many times. It's our job to try to settle the case as best we can and deal with people who are in trouble and suffering great difficulty. But there are also challenges in terms of researching the law, finding the correct legal answer, a solution to the problems, and so forth. So I really enjoy it from that standpoint.
The judge has a team of professionals who assist him in his work each day. Let's meet the staff. The court clerk usually sits near the judge and records all daily proceedings and prepares all court documents and orders. The clerk is in charge of all trial exhibits and uses a special marking system to keep track of them. The clerk swears in all witnesses and obligates them to tell the truth.
Before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If there is a jury trial, the clerk is responsible for assembling a panel of jurors and administering an oath that obligates them to decide the case fairly and on the evidence presented at the trial. At the end of the trial, the clerk reads the verdict out loud in court.
Found the defendant guilty.
To become a clerk, an applicant must be a high school graduate, have at least 4 years of legal clerical experience, and a thorough knowledge of court procedures. The deputy sheriff in the courtroom is called the bailiff. His or her primary duty is to protect the judge and provide security for everyone in the courtroom, and because of this, he is armed. When a witness is called to the stand, it's the bailiff who announces the witness and directs them to the witness stand. If there's a jury, the bailiff escorts them in and out of the courtroom. And during jury deliberations, the bailiff takes charge of the jury. Being a bailiff requires strength, endurance, and the physical ability to restrain a rebellious or violent offender. Bailiffs must be a minimum of 21 years of age and be a high school graduate, and it's usually required that they have completed the Sheriff's Academy or a similar program.
I take care of the judge, I take care of the public defender, DA's office, whoever's in the panel here, to keep basically the courtroom running smoothly and to respond to any situations that arise in the courtroom or outside the courtroom. Carry everything from magazines to taser, mace, pepper spray, gun, handcuffs.
This judge is handling a criminal case. This means a person has been accused of breaking the law. At the time of his arrest, the defendant was read his Miranda rights, which informed him of the charges against him and that he could remain silent. He was told that anything he said could be used against him in a court of law. Of great importance was his being informed he was entitled to have a defense attorney present before the police asked him questions, and that he would be provided a public attorney if he couldn't afford to hire a private attorney. The defendant's first appearance in court was at an arraignment hearing. At that hearing, the defendant and his attorney were again informed of the charges being filed. The judge also made sure that he understood his rights under the law. An arraignment hearing must be held no more than 2 days after the arrest. At the hearing, the defendant had to plead guilty or not guilty. If the plea was guilty, the judge would have decided the appropriate sentence. In this case, the plea was not guilty, and a date was set for the next court appearance, which would be a preliminary hearing. It's important that we remember that anyone accused of a crime is presumed innocent until proven guilty. The man sitting next to the defendant is his attorney from the Office of the Public Defender. He's the attorney assigned to this case because the defendant couldn't afford to hire a private attorney. In 1963, the United States Supreme Court decided an important case called Gideon versus Wainwright, which stated that no government can deny the Sixth Amendment right to counsel to an accused person who cannot afford to hire an attorney. The public defender's responsibility is to assure that the defendant has a fair trial. He appears with the defendant at all court appearances and trials. The public defender, who is a defense attorney, will look out for the best interests of his client with the best defense possible.
I'm not the most talented person as far as carpentry or anything else, but I think I'm a pretty good public defender, and it really feels good when you can make a difference in someone's life, whether you get a charge dismissed or a charge reduced, or you go to trial and actually win the occasional trial.
On December 21st, 2006,
the prosecuting attorney is from the Office of the District Attorney. He represents the people of the state of California. All criminal actions are brought by the state, not individuals. The prosecuting attorney in this case is a deputy district attorney. His primary duty is to investigate criminal charges and prosecute the offender. And it's not good enough to prove that the accused person might be guilty. He must prove that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. This is known as the burden of proof.
at times it's very emotional. You get caught up in the struggles that each person is going through, especially your victims in certain cases. It's a very unique position and a very privileged position to be able to represent a county and the people within it and a state in upholding the law.
To become a lawyer, one must obtain a college degree and then complete law school, which can take 3 years or more. After graduation from law school, the state bar examination has to be passed, at which time you can become licensed to practice law and advise clients. Attorneys on both sides must interview their clients and prepare strategies by talking with the witnesses and experts. They may conduct investigations to determine the facts. They will gather evidence, which will be presented at trial. Demonstrative evidence, such as a diagram, may be used to help explain a witness's testimony. The attorneys have the right to cross-examine witnesses who testify against their clients. Another aspect of each attorney's job is to research the laws regarding the case to help them convince the jury or the judge that the law favors his client. The attorney makes all court appearances on behalf of their client. The next time the defendant appeared in court with his attorney was a preliminary hearing. This is a hearing to determine if there is enough evidence for the court to believe that a crime has been committed and that the defendant should be held to answer for that crime. This is called probable cause. The attorneys question witnesses for both sides. The judge listens to the testimony and decides if the case should go to trial. There is no jury at a preliminary hearing. Criminal cases involve one of 3 kinds of offenses. A felony is more serious and usually involves incarceration in state prisons for more than 1 year. A misdemeanor is a less serious crime and is punishable by 1 year or less in a county jail. An infraction is usually a traffic offense and involves payment of a fine. A court reporter's responsibility is to keep an exact record of what everyone says in court by using a special machine called a stenotype that allows them to type about 225 words per minute. Occasionally, they're asked by the judge to read back what's been said.
Question, and after you hit the car, you stopped your vehicle, at that point, is that when you drank the Everclear? Answer, it was
Each
afterward.
day, a written transcript of the court proceedings can be prepared, which the reporter will certify as being the official and exact version of what took place in the courtroom. Being a court reporter requires attending a special school that teaches technical and legal terminology, teaches how to use the stenotype machine and a computer-aided transcription system, teaches proper English grammar, spelling, punctuation, and technical vocabulary, and a test must be passed to become certified.
It takes a couple years to actually almost perfect the art of writing, and we all have different styles of writing. It is difficult, the process to actually become a reporter, and the hours that we spend after hours, after the trial's over, after everyone's gone home. We stay here, we could stay here till midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. One of the big part, if not the biggest part in reporting is doing the research, all the reference work, all the background work that we do outside of the courtroom to get the exact spelling. We can't just guess at it. And sometimes some of the witnesses are expert witnesses, very technical terminology, and we need to get the terminology correct and the spelling correct.
This defendant has chosen to have a jury trial. This is a right which is guaranteed by the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. The amendment begins with the words, "In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district where the crime shall have been committed." A jury has been selected and is hearing the case. There are 12 people on the jury in a criminal case. There also may be 1 or more alternate jurors in case another juror gets sick or is disqualified. It's the jury's duty to listen to the criminal evidence presented and find the defendant guilty or not guilty. All 12 of the jurors must be in agreement in a criminal trial for a decision to be reached. This is called a unanimous verdict. If the jurors cannot all agree, there's an undecided verdict or hung jury, and there could be a new trial. Serving on a jury is an honor and a civic duty for every citizen of the United States, and one of the foundations of our system of justice. The average length of a jury trial is about 4 days, but a trial can last anywhere from 1 day to many weeks. Once seated on a jury, it's the responsibility of each juror to listen carefully to all the evidence. Jurors are not allowed to form any opinions or discuss the case with anyone, including fellow jurors, until the trial ends and deliberations begin. At the end of the trial, the jurors meet in a jury deliberation room, at which time they choose one of their members to be their leader. That person is called the foreman, or foreperson of the jury, and presides over the jury's discussions in the jury room. The jurors discuss the witness testimony and other evidence that was presented at trial. When a verdict is reached, a verdict form is completed and court is reconvened. The judge approves the verdict and it's read aloud by the clerk.
Verdict. We, the jury and panel to try the above entitled cause, find the defendant guilty.
Another person on the judge's staff is the court interpreter. Her job is to simultaneously interpret the spoken word from English to another language and back again. She will also translate the printed word for those who cannot read English. All court proceedings are conducted in English. Interpreters may be required for witnesses, plaintiffs, and defendants who do not speak or understand English fluently or are deaf. In criminal matters, this service is provided by the court to ensure that all participants get fair representation. The interpreter has been hired today because there is a witness who does not speak and understand English. Certification of a court interpreter requires a working knowledge of technical terms, grammar, spelling, vocabulary, and punctuation in both English and the additional language. A difficult examination must also be passed. Remember, in criminal trials, someone is accused of having committed a crime. In a civil trial, a person sues another person if they feel they've been injured or wronged. Many civil cases involve claims over money or property. Others involve an effort to protect someone's right that has been violated. Some examples of civil cases include contract disputes, claims for compensation over personal injury or property damage, or disputes over property ownership. This judge is handling the civil trial, where the injured woman is suing the defendant for money. The Seventh Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the right to a jury trial in a civil action. The plaintiff is the person who begins the lawsuit. This plaintiff started the action because she was hurt in an automobile accident caused by a driver who was driving under the influence. She is hoping to get money from the defendant to pay for the damage to her car and to pay her medical bills as a result of her personal injury. She can also request money damages to compensate her for pain and disability. She hired a private attorney called the plaintiff's attorney to represent her. This attorney will present evidence to show that the defendant is responsible for the loss to his client and will need to pay for that loss.
Well, I'm a plaintiff's trial lawyer, and the thing I like best about my job is the competitive nature of it. When I was a kid in high school, I was involved in sports. Being a trial lawyer is a lot like that. You have an opponent. You try your case to a jury. The jury tells you whether you win or lose. And in that respect, it's much like the competitions that I used to undergo when I was a kid.
The attorney for the defendant in this civil trial is called the defense attorney. His job is to show that his client is not at fault and should not have to pay the plaintiff. He's been hired by the defendant or the defendant's insurance company. Civil trials may also use juries. However, these trials can have fewer than 12-person juries, and the jury decision does not need to be unanimous. The case can be decided by a 3/4 majority of the jurors. If both the plaintiff and the defendant agree to waive a jury, they can choose to have a bench trial, which is also called a court trial, where the judge decides the facts and the law instead of the jury. If the plaintiff and defendant decide to solve their problem by mutual agreement, they can avoid a trial altogether. This is called a settlement, and often involves an agreement out of court to pay money or take some other action. Most trials have the same order. After jury selection, they start with an opening statement by the attorney on each side. This is followed by evidence being presented by witnesses for both sides. Each side is allowed to cross-examine witnesses for the other side. After all the evidence has been presented, the attorney for each side makes a closing argument. The jury then goes into the jury room, discusses the evidence, and decides on a verdict. There are also specialized courts within the court system. Here are a few of them. Small Claims Court is for civil matters under $7,500 in value. On TV, this is called the People's Court. In Small Claims Court, lawyers are not usually allowed. You represent yourself, and the judge decides the outcome. Family Court handles matters like divorce, domestic violence, child custody, and child support. Juvenile Court is for people under 18 years of age who are accused of having committed crimes. Punishments can include being confined at a juvenile detention center. Probate Court is a place to decide how the property of people who have died should be divided up and who should get it. As this program comes to a close, you should now have a better understanding of who's who in court. In the courtroom, the judge oversees all courtroom proceedings and trials. The court clerk marks and maintains court records and evidence. The bailiff is in charge of courtroom security. The court reporter creates a written record of everything said. The interpreter translates from one language to another. In criminal trials, the defendant has been accused of a crime but is innocent until proven guilty. The defense attorney represents the defendant, or the public defender represents the defendant who cannot afford to hire a private attorney. The district attorney represents the people of the state of California and tries to prove the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. In civil trials, the plaintiff sues to make the defendant take some action or pay money that is owed. The plaintiff's attorney represents the plaintiff, and the defense attorney represents the defendant.
I enjoy the job because it's a job in which you can assist people in resolving their problems.
My purpose is to make sure that the process is fair and that each side plays by the rules.
I like the hours, Monday through Friday, holidays, weekends off.
What I like is that we facilitate communication.
It really feels good when you can make a difference in someone's life.
I think I have the best job in the world.